All right, fam. It's your boy Chadsky. Second video here. If you missed it before, I did a video on archers and are they playable? Especially getting your second and third archer marches. That video is on my channel. You can check that one out. But one of the things I did in there was I gave the reasons why archers are kind of in a tough spot. And one of those reasons was that the benefit archers have always given is damage. Well, infantry, like it or not, and I can't believe it, I can't believe I'm saying it after all these years, but infantry have closed the gap on damage. They do just as much damage as archers. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that, guys. Like, infantry does as much damage as archers. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Well, they do. They just flat out do. I mean, when you look at their kits here. Of course, Luce is doing a ton of damage, just a ton. Okay, and of course, you get down into some of these. William Wallace's was brought out. He's doing a ton of damage, the AOE damage. Like, let's go. And of course, you've got Scipio, who's Scipio's been meta. He's great, a lot of damage, additional damage he does. And so, from that standpoint, you know, when you even look at this, even Gorgo, if you guys are going to run like smite marches and put Luce behind Gorgo, like, she's going to do a ton of damage, 2,300, and she's going to be a little tanky with her skill damage, and she's going to boost normal damage. And so if you put Luce behind her, it's just going to boost Luce. So infantry does a ton of damage, okay? And so what do? Even when we think that the developers of the game are going to more smite for infantry, which I think is a lot of fun. I mean, it gives it a kind of a uniqueness to infantry. But they release Ragnar, Lodbrok, and in his prime format. Right, let me switch it up here. And from that, here's our guy. And so what's interesting about this commander that they release, and by the way, this is not a like a next gen commander. This is not a 10th generation commander. This is kind of like one of those free commanders that they throw out in the game, right? And Ragnar Prime is kind of made for a specific kind of KVK. It's the Britain KVK. It's a new Pioneer KVK that's coming out. There's some cool stuff you can do with Ragnar in like an artifact or a relic you can put on him. But the developers did confirm that he's going to be an everyday commander. You can go pull him, and you can put heads into him, and you can expertise him. And oh boy, he's not a smite guy. He's a skill guy. Well, here's the question. We've all been asking it for 3 years. Is Guan finally done? Can we replace Guan? Can we retire him with dignity and honor? I mean, this dude, when he came out, you know, when you look at Guan, guys, this dude came out like 4 years ago. And just look at his kit. I mean, it's just wild. 2,000 damage factor to 3 targets. And you're going to silence for 3 seconds. That was so meta back then. And honestly, even 2 years ago was still meta. And even today in Canyon, you got to have it in the field. If you're running a skilled damage infantry march, he's still the guy. Okay, you got to put Scipio with somebody. If you're going to run Wallace and Luce as your smite march, or Luce and Alex as your smite march, you're still running Guan with Scipio. And most everybody I know runs 2 infantry. And so his kit is still pretty good. Now it falls off a little bit because you've got attack and a little bit of march speed. But the damage is there. Like, if you hit 2 more targets, you're going to get 1,400 damage factor to the current target. On a 50% average, that's about 700 additional damage factor. Okay? Well, it's going to have to be pretty good if we're going to get rid of Guan. So you bring up this guy. Here he is. And if you look at his skills, his Raven's Call, his active skill, he's a skill commander, skill tree just like Guan, which is great because there's a lot of rage in there and there's a lot of cool stuff you do and damage in the skill tree. And so, but when you look at this, it's the exact same as Guan. You get 2,000 direct damage factor to 3 targets. That's awesome. And then it gives you a guaranteed 300 damage factor for 2 seconds on the target. So where Guan was at 2,700 damage factor, Ragnar's at 2,600 damage factor. But that's not all. That gets enhanced with his expertise. We'll talk about that in a few. Okay? Go down to his second skill. And this is why Ragnar, you get into his second and especially his third skill, it gets pretty wild. So this commander's infantry gains 40% defense. Fantastic. 40% defense compared to Guan's 30% attack. I'll take the defense every time. So he's tanky. This guy has got a lot of defense. He's tanky. They give him a little bit of march speed with 10%. Now that's just a baseline, because some things happen in the next skill that's crazy, blow your mind. And then the normal damage reduction of 10%. Okay, this is perpetual, and it's fantastic because smite damage, counterattack damage, basic attack, you are mitigating that by 10%. That's great. The more smite damage commanders they come out with, the more this is relevant. So it adds even more tankiness, okay? Then we go to his third skill, and this like blew everybody away. You know why? Because we've never seen this before. This is the first time in the history of the game that we have seen the drain effect, okay? And what the drain effect is a debuff and a buff at the same time. You're basically draining attributes from your target, from your enemy, and you're giving it to the commander. The commander gets those attributes, okay? And so it cites here it's got to be a field troop. By the way, side note, Ragnar is a field commander. There are too many skills in here that are specific to the field troops. It even says it. It cannot be a rally, cannot be a garrison. He will not be a rally or a garrison. He will be a field commander for you, which is fine. If you're wanting to replace Guan, then this is the guy to do it because Guan was never a rally for you anyways. Okay, and so from that standpoint, you look at this and you say, okay, what's this drain effect do? Well, here's the key. Whenever it launches or is hit by a basic attack, it has a 30% chance to inflict this drain effect on the target, okay? That is huge. Typically to proc a particular skill, you either have to be getting hit or you have to be hitting somebody. Well, they're given both. Like whether you're hitting somebody or getting hit, you're gonna proc this, and it's a 30% chance. And the enemy attack is dropped by 20%, and then you take over that attack. Basically, that's a 40% attack effect, right? You're taking 20% from the enemy, you're doing 20% yourself. And that's great, but that's not what makes this awesome. The march speed makes it incredible. Like, we're all trying to figure this out, and I'm like, wait, guys, you do realize, like 30% march speed, okay? When you're in a murder ball fight, and you're getting hit all the time, and you're targeting, and you're getting hit and targeting, and back and forth, and going through, and doing all the things you do in a murder ball fight, and click, 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 how we all do it, right? This dude is gonna have so much uptime on this particular skill that he's gonna have 30% all the time. You know the reason why? There's no cooldown. Like, I don't see any cooldown there, and unless the developers like nerf this account, or I'm sorry, nerf this commander, or they like add like, you know, some kind of cooldown when the commander's actually released, this is broken, like broken. You know how fast that is? That's 30% on top of the 10% he's already got. He's the fastest infantry commander with this buff in the game, outside of maybe Guan leaving a node, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's crazy. In a murder ball fight, it's all about how hard you can hit, how tanky you are, and how fast you can get away. Those are the three aspects of murder ball fights. Utility's great. You know, you've got commanders like Herman, that's great. You've got buff commanders like Alex, that's great. People still run Trajan, that's fine. And you've got commanders that will do things, you know, the Cavalry William is good. He'll do defense boosts and rage boosts. You know, Joan Prime does a little bit of rage boost. So those are all fine. But the bottom line is you want to do as much damage as possible. You want to be as tanky as possible, and you want to get out of trouble. Those are the three main aspects of field fighting. Okay, so this dude, I mean, it's incredible. If he's got that, I mean, that is like jump in the Lambo and go, get out of here. And so from that standpoint, you go to his fourth skill. Okay, and what do they give you? They give you 25% less skill damage. Dynamite. I'll take more of that, as much as you want to give me. You know, so if you can mitigate skill damage, awesome. That just makes you even more tanky. Okay, and then it's got a little bit of a 15% skill damage boost when you're over 70% rage, and that lasts 4 seconds. So basically what that means is you're going to get a 15% skill damage boost for at least the primary commander. Now, with some fast rage cycles, you might get the secondary commander too, but you know, that's just, it's kind of meh. But if it's attached to a 25% skill damage reduction, I mean, think about that, guys. We talk about Saladin and how we all love that support skill we get from Saladin on the skill damage mitigation. This is massive. And so the kit is looking like saucy. Everything works and everything is simple and easy to kind of focus on. Even the drain effect. We're not talking about like true damage and trying to do a algorithm and trying to figure out exactly what it means. This is just straight up. Like, I'm taking 20% attack, I'm getting it myself. I'm taking 30% march speed and I'm getting it myself. And just to give you guys some context with that, like this third skill right here, if you're chasing a Nevsky Joan that's just faster than you are, and that thing goes off for 2 seconds, that's a 60% march speed effect. Like, they're gonna slow down 30% and you're gonna go faster. You can literally catch and stay with Nevsky and Joan if that thing fires off. It's crazy. It's just crazy what that thing does. Okay, and then we had talked about damage, and just on the surface with just the active skill, the damage is comparable to Guan. It's about the same, right? Well, then here's where it gets crazy. Okay, first of all, on the expertise, it's gonna bump it up 10%, right? It's gonna bump up the damage you do to the 3 targets by 200. So you're at 2,200 there for each target. Okay, so that's more than Guan. Now here's the kicker, and this is what's crazy about this commander doing so much damage, okay? All troops hit by his skill take an additional damage of every second for the next 2 seconds. All the troops, so he's gonna hit 3. He's got a half moon, a half circle AoE. I mean, it's like a Honda in an FO AoE. You're gonna hit 3, in a murder ball, you're gonna hit 3 targets every time. And when you do, all of a sudden now you're gonna get 300 damage factor on all 3 targets for 2 seconds. That's 900 damage factor times 2 seconds. That's 1,800 damage factor. 1,800! And so when you all of a sudden start stacking up all that damage, it is 35% more damage than Guan. Straight up. Okay, now we're talking. Okay, can we really talk about this? Can we really kind of dissect this and figure out how this is gonna work and compare it to Guan? Okay, when we go back to Guan's kit, this is what's crazy about Guan. He does have this 30% attack, and he's got the march speed. And he does this weird healing thing that we've all noticed. It's kind of okay. There's some tricks you can do, like hitting a flag over and over. You can like literally replenish your Guan. You can do some things with it, but it's just kind of like whatever, you know, 1,000 healing. You don't want to leave combat when you're in the murder ball. You want to stay hooked up and keep the rage going. So that's just not really that big of a deal. This is kind of a big deal because it provides more damage. Okay, then Guan's expertise. Now this is where it gets a little bit finicky. Okay, when he receives a shield, he does that skill damage. So if you look at it on average, he's got a 15% skill damage boost. Well, Ragnar's got that too when he's over 70% rage. Well, Ragnar's is going to fire off every cycle. This particular skill is not going to fire off every cycle. It's random. And if you're with Scipio, Scipio's throwing up those shields at random. And so from that standpoint, it's not as good as Ragnar. It doesn't have as much uptime as Ragnar's 15% skill damage boost. You do have the march speed effect when you're leaving a building or a resource point. People know this, we've all been playing with Guan for so long that when you go into a resource node and you pop out, Guan is like super fast. And if you're micromanaging Guan, you can get him out of trouble if you've got a resource node close. If you don't, you're kind of SOL. You just got to deal with it. And so let's like look at overall how we're going to compare this stuff. And I've got a little deal written up here that gives us an idea, right? Okay, and I'll just read this through so we can judge and assess, because again, I don't really have a dog in the fight here. Guan is my favorite commander. He's the reason why I even started playing this game 4 or 5 years ago, and so I always revered him. I read about him, and then I saw this game with Guan, so I'm kind of a Guan simp. And when it comes to getting him off the field, it better be really good, because I'm just partial to him. I have affinity towards Guan. And so Ragnar does 40% defense. Okay, Guan does 30% attack. Now, Guan also has a museum buff that gives him 10% defense. Okay, but still, in this modern day of fighting in Rise of Kingdoms, I'd rather have 40% defense than 30% attack with 10% defense. I'd rather take the defense. And so Ragnar checks that box. Okay, they both have the a little bit of march speed. Guan's got 15%, Ragnar has 10% perpetually, right? But Ragnar gets that 30% trigger, and he gets a lot of uptime with that, based on how they've released him now, as far as his information and his attributes. That Ragnar is super fast. Super fast. I don't think people realize this. If that thing procs, which it'll proc a lot, and you have him with Scipio, your march speed is 65%. Like, that's going to be faster than most of your calves. Like, that's amazing. And it's so tanky, goodness gracious. Because the next thing we're going to talk about is 10% less normal damage and 25% less skill damage for Ragnar. That's super tanky, guys. That's like you can't, you're hitting a brick wall at some point with this dude. And so when you look at their skill damage boost, I talked about the 15% that both commanders have. Guan's does not have as much uptime as Ragnar's, so Ragnar's a little bit better, but we'll just call that a wash, okay? So Ragnar right now wins in tankiness, he wins in march speed, he really wins in tankiness, and he really wins in march speed if you really think about it. And so from there, you always take those enhancements and you try to say, okay, is that worth the silence? Because that's obviously what Guan's biggest attribute is that he silences. It's great in Canyon, it's good in murder ball fights, it's kept him alive and kept him going and really still being a good commander even to this day, so many years later. I mean, imagine this, when this guy came out, like, it was a must. I just never forget, for 2 or 3 years, everybody ran Guan Alex, everybody. They had good synergies and they were just really good together. But when you see this, every time an infantry commander has come out, we always ask the same questions. Okay, they're powerful. They do a lot of damage. They can do AoE damage, or they do, you know, additional damage, or they do crazy buffs or debuffs, or they're fast. Like, we take all the attributes and we always get to this question. Yeah, but does it outweigh the silence? And the answer to this day has always been no, it does not. Well, now it does, because Ragnar does 35% more damage on his skill cycles than Guan. 35% more. That's a lot. That's not just a little, that's a lot. Okay? And Ragnar is much tankier. 40% defense, 25% skill reduction, 10% normal damage reduction. Ragnar is faster, crazy fast, okay? And he has a debuff that enhances himself as well in the drain effect, okay? So we talked about how he's faster. Well, the other part of that drain is I'm gonna take 20% attack from the enemy and I get it myself, okay? So you're gonna mitigate 20% attack, or you're basically going to drain that from the enemy, so that's a debuff, and then I get it myself, and that's an extra 20% attack. And remember, that's with heavy uptime. There's no cooldown there, and it's whether you hit the target, or you're being hit. That's going to be high uptime, and so that's a huge plus, I think, for Ragnar. And then you take all those and you try to say, okay, is it worth the Guan silence? And I'm going to agree that it is. I'm making the declaration now, and I'm probably gonna hate myself for it because I love Guan so much, but this Ragnar dude is just too powerful. He's too good. He's got too much damage, and we talked about how infantry has somehow weirdly, I don't know how, but weirdly, they become like the highest damage commanders. I mean, it's crazy. Of course, you got Zhuge Herman, and that's like the highest damage march there is, right? Collectively with AoE. But there's no other archers. I mean, Ash does a good amount of damage. What is Ash's damage? Let's look here, because I knew it was pretty good. And he does 5 enemy targets at 1,500, right? But then he's got some additional damage that he does to the current target. So he does good damage. I would say like S- damage. Where Zhuge and Herman do S+ damage. Like, it doesn't get any higher as a collective march. But from there, the infantry, they've got like 5 commanders. 4 now with Ragnar, definitely, maybe 5 if you're using Gorgo, that just do crazy damage. And so let's think about this for 2 seconds. If we're gonna pair Ragnar, if we are gonna replace him with Guan, and it's gonna be the best infantry skill damage march you can get in the field, and you're going to replace him with Guan, and you're going to put him with Scipio. Okay, if you put him with Scipio, let's just think about this. Scipio, heavy damage, great debuff with the 30% health, great debuff. So there's now multiple utilities. You're taking attack away from him, from the drain on Ragnar. You're taking health away from the enemy, whoever you hit with that AoE from Scipio. Okay, you're going to have 40% attack. So what you have on defense with Ragnar, you now have an attack. You got 15% march speed. You got another 10% when you're outside of Alliance territory. So Scipio, when you're out field fighting and you're pressing the attack, he's giving you 25%. That's where that 65% march speed comes from if you pair him with Ragnar, and if Ragnar is hitting the drain effect. I mean, it is so fast. I mean, that's crazy for infantry. And then we know this with a 4-piece Eternal set, you're getting 10%. And if you get the boots to level 5, you get another 13.5%. Like, you can make infantry with the skills that the commanders give you, the gear the commander gives you, or the game gives you, as far as the equipment goes. You can make infantry so freaking fast, and with this particular march, it's incredible. Third skill's great. You're gonna get 20% health. Awesome. Add that to the 40% defense of Ragnar. You're tanky, okay? And then you're just gonna go do more damage. 10% chance to proc that additional damage. We all see those red numbers proc 3 times when Scipio is hitting a target. That's great. 1,500 more damage. Awesome. Now it's 10%, so it's very rare when it goes off, but it does go off about once every 2 cycles. And so from there, you get into his 4th skill. You're gonna reduce the damage, the skill damage that's being done. So you have a 50% chance to reduce the skill damage being done. Okay, so let's cut that 30% in half. So on average, you get 15% skill damage reduction. Okay, couple that with Ragnar's 25%, that's 40% skill damage reduction. That's crazy. And then of course he throws up the shields. Now Ragnar doesn't have any shield synergies, but this is just bonus. I mean, it's good. Now here's the other thing when it comes to Guan's silence that you're trying to decide. Okay, when the target is silenced. Okay, first of all, it's 10% more skill damage when you're Scipio. You add that to Ragnar's 15%. Okay, that's good. It's not game changing, but it's good. But then here's what it is. Here's the thing you got to decide. The troop rage of 30% boost that you get when the target is silenced. This is why Scipio has really worked well with Guan and really kind of helped pull Guan into the modern day meta today, because Guan is still there. And this is part of it, because Guan's gonna go silence, and then it's like getting an extra crit on your horn. You're gonna ramp up the rage even faster when the target is silenced. Is that worth it to replace Guan with Ragnar? Or is it worth it to keep Guan and not do Ragnar? I don't think it is. And the reason why is because William Wallace has a silence now, okay? And there's still gonna be a lot of people out there running Guan. Like I'll run 3 infantry. I have some versatility because I've got a lot of critted sets, and I'll run 3 infantry marches, no problem at all. And as long as a Guan is silencing the target, it doesn't say it has to be your march silencing. It's just if the target is silenced, then Scipio will run that rage up. So I think you're okay there. That doesn't really, it's not too much of an effect there. So overall, you go pair Ragnar, you go pair this cat with Scipio, and it's the best march you can get in any kind of active skill for infantry. And I would argue it's one of the best marches that you could run in the game. I mean, think about it. All the damage, all the tankiness, even the debuffing, the march speed. I mean, it does everything. It literally does everything. And so, with that being said, it's the question. It makes me think, like, I can't believe we're doing this. I can't believe we're gonna bench Guan. We'll have more testing when it comes out. Anybody that knows me knows that I get excited and I love to play this game, play it with a lot of passion, and I have fun and voice. And anybody who's played with me in any kingdom knows how I like to play this game. And it's all love, and absolutely love and appreciate everybody that's a part of it. And so with that being said, I love doing these videos, and I love being able to talk about this stuff. I'll try to find stuff that people don't see. I'll try to find things, mechanics in the game, mechanics with certain commanders, attributes with certain commanders. I'll try to find things as I play and play high-end KVKs, and I fight high-end kingdoms and players, and I top a canyon or Lost Canyon. Like, I can give you a real-life high-end, hey, this is how this works, or that doesn't work, or has anybody tried this? And there's another video I'll do about Smite and how I went all in on Smite last KVK and it worked. And I guess what I ran with it? Takeda. You guys are gonna think I'm crazy, but when I explain it, it will all make sense. So if you like the channel, if you like the video, like and subscribe, help me out a little bit. I'm just gonna have fun with these videos, put them up, and hopefully you guys will come along, and you got any questions or anything, you can hit me up in the game, you can hit me up on Discord, you can hit me up on the YouTube comments. You just let me know, and anybody that knows me knows that I'm pretty open and honest and a pretty nice guy, and so I'll talk to anybody. And with that being said, you guys enjoy.